whilst I'm waiting for the paint to dry for the towers that go on here, I thought we'd get on and have a look at this motor. Well, I've had a look at it, and what we're going to do is take off the manifold, take off the valve cover here. We're going to set the valves. Now we can do this with the engine cold, but the intakes we have to have the engine hot. Alright, but the thing is, at the same time, whilst we're working on this, we can do an awful lot of jobs at the same time. For example, down here, well, look at the access we've got to the oil filter. So I'm going to drop the oil out of this, and at the same time, well, before I do that, I've got one of these. What the heck's that, Mike? Well, it's a magnetic block heater. Bang it on the sump, warms the oil up, drops oil out really easy. Bingo! It's supposed to have a handle on here, but it broke off. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to leave it running whilst I have lunch, but the filter we can drop out straight away. What I'm going to do too is take off the spark plugs and the cap. Now the spark plugs, if you're working on one of these straight sixes or the series 1 4 cylinders, a lot of times the original cars spark plug shrouds have gone missing, and they were like a little cap that fitted over these holes here to stop water getting in. Now when you've replaced them with modern type of plug leads, what happens is water fills up in these dishes here where the spark plugs are, you know, where they're undercut. Absolutely hopeless. So get your air line and your air gun and blow them out before you take the plugs out, otherwise you'll have water in your engine. So that's the idea today. Take this lot off, set the valves, set the spark plugs. I've got an idea that the distributor is actually an electronic thing, because there's a box here that I don't know what it does, but it starts. But we're going to try and do as many jobs as we can, and hopefully it's going to, you know, we're just going to check the valves and things like that. So let's get started. If you're unfamiliar with engines like this and you want to pull the spark plugs off, just put some cable ties around the leads. So that's number 1. Number 2. Like that. So one tie up on 1 and 1 and 2. Well, you get the idea. Now, we did take these leads off once before, and Michelle started to cut the cable ties off, and said, no, leave them on, because we're going to do some more work to it. So we don't do number 6 because, well, there's no point, because it can only go on one way. So we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and leave 6. And now we can safely pull off these. Oh no, we can't. Oh, I bet that wasn't firing. Bloody the connectors up here. There you go. Because you see, this has got the wrong spark plugs in. I'm going to take that off. Gives us a bit more room. No, it's still got points in this whole thing. So it must be electronic spark assisted. I don't know, there's wires everywhere on this damn thing. And the coil's not supposed to be there. I can't even get to the... There. We can take the main lead out and throw that on the roof. So now we can get our plugs out quite easy, and then we'll start to take off the manifold. So with the spark plugs out, I thought I'd take the bolts off this cover to see if I could get it and slide it out of this way. No, you can't get it out because of the dipstick. So I'm going to have to struggle and get this manifold off. Good job I got the gaskets. It doesn't say it in the book, but I can't see it because the attachment for the dipstick tube is behind the oil filter. And I mean behind the oil filter housing, not just behind the oil filter. Okay. Oh well. let's get on with that. Oh, well, this bolt's coming out. These are terrible engines to work on. There is a stud at the back, right under here. I've got the coil out the way. I could hardly get my hand into it, and the only way I could get it off was with a 13mm key and just work it off. And the reason is I'm not sure if it's the wrong stud, or the stud wasn't screwed in properly, but they've put a nut on as a spacer. But the front one, oh, it was terrible. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this down when I put it back in again. Now the manifold bolts themselves, well, this one here wasn't tight at all, it just came off my fingers. These ones here, yeah, they're not too bad. Yeah, they're going to come off. The only good thing about these engines was that the exhaust nose sounded right, and it was very smooth. That was it. Yeah, that should lift up. There you go. So you don't need to take all the studs out. That's on the deck. Now we can take this out. What a concussion. So you can see what a mess about it is to get to the valves. Let's zoom in a bit. There you see, there they are. So I'm going to take the valve cover off, and then we can go and see what the order is for turning these, because I can't use my regular 4-cylinder trick. I've got to do something else, but yeah, this looks like a real pig, and the gasket looks like a pig of a job as well to put on. I've rebuilt one of these engines before, and I swore I'd never do another one. But there's no molasses or anything like that inside, so that's pretty good. So let's, I'm going to go and get some lunch. What time is it? 1:30. So after a right mess about, I got the covers off. The rocker box cover here, the valve cover, man, was that stuck down. That was stuck down with some mighty good stuff, urethane. I had a hell of a job trying to get it off. Good job I had my dismantling tool, because I don't know how you'd get it off without it. So I've got the starting handle in the crank, and I've set, according to the book of words here, it says, set number 1, tap it with number 6 valve fully open. Number 6 valve is fully open, this is number 1, and you can drive a bus through it. So, I'm going to adjust these, then I'll get the gasket off, and I'm going to bond the gasket to the block, because I think we're going to have a hell of a job trying to get it lined up, because if you see here, there's no lip for the gasket to be held on. You know, it just sits there, so I think we're going to have to glue it on somehow onto the block. Why? Because I think I noticed on the block it's got some holes here for the, like they've cut it off here, can you see? They've cut that. Well, let's take it off. Well, you see they've cut it, and it's supposed to have a hole, location hole here, otherwise it's all going to sag. Anyway, let me do that. I mean, I've wasted enough time on this already. I might as well continue and doing all these little jobs at the same time. And then we'll see how we get on. So the valve's all set, now it's time to fit the gasket. Just as I said to you before, here's the gasket. I've taped it to the cardboard, which I wasn't expecting. And you can see it's got these braces in here to hold it up. Well, I don't offer too much confidence in that. I bet many a person snapped these gaskets trying to get it out of here, including me, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some high-low sill on this. You shouldn't really put anything on gaskets with this being so bad to locate, I'm going to put gasket sealer on it and use it as an adhesive rather than the sealer, because I don't want it to come off. The surface is not too bad, you know, but by God, that seal, I don't know what the hell it used, but it gets everywhere. But it was a nasty job trying to get it out the back. And there's some wires dangling down there. Anyway, we'll put some sealer on this and then we'll come back. Like I say, we're not using it to seal. We're using it as an adhesive. Because probably, as you know, that Land Rovers, they never leak oil. I don't know, I've never seen one. Especially these old series, they're sort of like oil tight, you know what I mean? Once I've done this, I'll start to ring the bank up again. My credit card, or my debit card, I lent my card out. They put the wrong PIN number in 3 times. Now it's locked out, I can't get back in. Our local branch is closed for the virus thing. I was on hold for 3/4 of an hour trying to get through at the bank. They say, ring us up, ring us up. Yeah, alright, we'll ring it up if somebody's there. Right, less of that rambling. It gives us something to do, I suppose. Right, very carefully we're going to guide this into place. There is so many places that this can get torn and ruptured and messed about with. Now you can begin to see what I was saying about those pieces of gasket here support the upper gasket, if not it would sag down. There we go. That is going to be lovely. So all we're going to do, we're going to leave that to tack off. Alright, we're going to leave it just to tack off and then I'll fit the cover. I've got the gasket back on again, I've got the cover on and the gasket's nipped up really nice and you can see it all the way across there. I'm very happy with that. Now, one thing you've got to notice, perhaps on one of these things here, one of them's got a tapping into it to hold the dipstick tube in. Brilliant. There's the bracket. Not so brilliant, because how the heck is that going to go onto there, look? See what I mean? There's the little bracket there. I don't know, that's straight, that. I really don't know how that works out. Is it bent up a bit? I don't know. But anyway, we'll see. So the next thing is to put the exhaust on. I'm going to put new gaskets on. I'm not going to put any sealer on the gaskets, but like I said, that one right at the very back. Look at these bloody wires there. I don't know what the hell they're going. Yeah, that back one's going to be a problem. I'm going to have to work on that a bit. I just noticed something. If you remember earlier when we took this off, there was a big stud at the back with a sort of nut on it and a loose nut. You know, this thing here was used as a spacer. See? So I thought I'd take the one off the front and have a look at it. I double nutted the front one. There it is. This is the one out the back. See? Completely different thread. Now, that's put me in a bit of a flux, because I don't know if they've tapped this out at the back to a different thread. No, that's going in there. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I bet they've really buggered this up by dropping the stud. I'm going to have a look in my stud box, see if I can find one. Right, with all the studs back in and some nice anti-seize on there, we should be able to fit the manifold. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah, I was just thinking about something. You never hear about that new Defender anymore, the one that they had all that rigmarole last September. You know, if they'd have waited, they could have called it the Land Rover COVID-19. It takes your breath away. You won't get better. That would have been a good advert, wouldn't it? People have bought it in droves because they all know the name now, don't they? Right, less of that nonsense. You could have noticed that for a 2.6, the exhaust ports are remarkably small. It's almost like a little Honda motorcycle. Right, let's see if this is going to go on. Come on, baby. Come on. Yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm glad I put that stud in at the back like that because it's such a struggle. So with them on, all you have to do now is twist and turn those. And now you can fasten that down. I think that's the best feature on this truck so far is the manifold attachment bolts. Nothing else. And I've got a sneaking feeling when I drop the oil off, there's a little plate missing off the oil filter. I didn't see it. At the bottom of the casing canister, the steel canister, there's supposed to be a spring and a flat plate to push the oil filter up. I didn't see it, there was just a spring fell out. I hope it's in the oil bath. Otherwise I'm knackered. Otherwise oil's not been going anywhere. Well, it has, it's just been recirculated without going through a filter. Oh, those bolts are a lot easier to tighten up now. There, look at those. So you can't get the nuts on. If it's all tightened up, you can't get the nuts on. So you have to put them on first. COVID-19. Yeah, power. Oh yeah, I wonder what happened to that new Defender. You don't hear anything about it now. They're all singing and dancing about it. Richard Hammond was doing all sorts of things. But you know, I was thinking about it. That new Defender. I thought, why didn't they do some sort of fancy road testing or some, you know, like off-roady type event? You know, almost like Camel Trophy. Probably it wouldn't get round. Because it's a lifestyle vehicle, isn't it? It's not a Land Rover. Probably at this minute they're training all their mechanics up to fix all the known faults. When I turn around to look at the camera, I think, oh, that's great. But you can still see my back a bit. Well, that's what you get with live stuff. I'm just going to sort of hold those down a bit. Now, obviously, we can't get a torque wrench in there, so we have to use our judgment. But we don't want to crack the manifold, so we progressively tighten that up. But now there's some anti-seize on there, it makes life an awful lot easier. We may have to tighten these up again later. Yeah, you just can't get a ring span in there. Can on this one. Not on that one either. Oh, they're not too bad. I'll tighten those up. I'll tighten those up properly once it's all warmed up, and then it'll settle down a little bit better. Otherwise, I couldn't be bothered. So I'm going to put some nuts and new nuts and spring washers on the end bolt, on the end studs, and then fasten up the exhaust. But I'm concerned now, thinking about that oil filter. I'll have to have a look for the bits. Let me finish this exhaust and I'll come back. Well, this is a mystery. I just drained the oil off, and all there was a filter and a spring. Now, let's have a look at this. There is nothing in the bottom of there. spring on. Hey, you know, I wonder if this filter's got a... No. See, when they put the filter in, it's just dropped down to the bottom. It's not going to seal at the top. There's a part missing. What a waste of time putting that filter in. Blast. I need a big washer. Let me see if I can find one. Land Rover to the rescue once more. So the filters are just a little bit different. That's a smaller one, but it wasn't doing anything anyway. You can see there's a difference in height. These are only, you can only get genuine filters for these now. Aftermarket ones have gone. However, I put the spring in the bottom, and I found one of the washers, one of those shock washers. If I put that in like that, it hits the spring, but also will allow that to work. Land Rover, think simply years ahead. So I'm going to fasten this oil filter on. I'm going to change the O-ring and the seal, put that on, then we'll call that a day for this. What else can we do? Oh, we got the towers to do. The paint will be dry for those tomorrow, so we'll see you in a bit.